Hey, this is Tom, and I'm here with Jackey Neyman Jones, who played Debbie in Manos, the Hands of Fate, and her dad was Tom Neyman, who played the Master. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate
Well,
it.
you're welcome. I mean, it's fun. I just can't imagine something more interesting to be known for.
So, at the time of this recording, Manos is still number two on IMDb's bottom 100 list, second only to Disaster Movie. Is
Oh,
Yeah, it's considered one of the worst movies of all time. A lot of people say it's the worst movie, but I've definitely seen a few others that are worse.
I was in one that was a lot worse
Oh
than
yeah,
Mono. Yeah, only 7 seconds, but it's called The Curse of
right.
Bigfoot. Yeah, that's way worse. But I've seen, I mean, of course, it's not the worst. People refer to that in the most loving
Hmm.
of ways, but it is taught in film school as everything not to do in filmmaking, and that's true. But it's taken me years to understand the draw to it, but I understand a lot more these days than I used
Hmm.
to about why people love it so much.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask about that because there's an early post on your blog where you said you didn't understand why so many people loved it and asked why. Since then, have you gotten a lot of unique answers to that question?
Well, yeah, I've just met so many talented people, and I've been invited to be part of some really great projects, and the things that have been inspired by Manos is
Hmm.
incredible. I mean, there's like four stage productions. There's the Manos Hands of Felt, out of
Right.
Seattle, which is a puppet show,
Hmm.
and on YouTube available. But and then there's our sequel. There's trading cards. There's other books and coloring books, and I mean video games. It has inspired so many like really unique and interesting. There's a band, Monos, the Band of Fate. You
Hmm.
know, um, so I don't know. It may be the audience for one thing.
Hmm.
Mystery Science
Yeah.
Theater. These are people I can totally relate to. I mean, I'm a I graduated high school in 1977, and my best friend and I were huge fans of Fire Sign Theater,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
we we memorized every single album, and we just drove everybody nuts. We had a line for everything, and so when this thing came out and it got popular, I'm like, this is my tribe. These are
Hmm.
my people. I get it. Yeah, but one of the big things about the draw of Monos is the fact that it was such a low budget. It
Hmm.
was it was this big vision on a very limited ability,
Hmm.
and yet it actually got done and finished. And a lot of people admire that because how many better projects never get done?
Hmm.
And how many millions of dollar projects are actually worse than that?
Yeah. Um. Yeah, you mentioned that it's listed as like everything that you shouldn't do. But from what I can see, there are a lot of reasons why the movie could have been worse, and it sounds like a lot of the reason it isn't worse is because of your dad, like the amazing details he added to the movie.
Yeah, oh, I agree with that. And that's another thing is people have asked me over the years why, you know, they're like, God, it's so great that you embrace this so fully,
Hmm.
well, main thing is I was 6 years old. It's not my fault. And then the other thing is that my dad didn't write, direct, or produce it.
Hmm.
He starred in it. And in fact, I have the award here in my studio where I'm sitting, but my dad won Best Actor of the Year award three different times at the Community Theater in El Paso, where Hal Warren and the other male actors came from. And in fact, he won Best Actor of the Year for in 1966, the same year Manos was made, for playing the lead role in the play Henry IV. And that's where Hal Warren found John Reynolds, who
Yeah.
played Torgo, because he was in the play, and then Bernie Rosenblum and Bob Guidry were also part of the backstage, and they became the crew, the cameraman and the stuntman and the kissing teenager in the car, and you know.
Mhm.
So, it was this small group of people. It all came from community theater, but my dad was a very talented artist and actor, and so he really had nothing to be ashamed of that. But he did all the props,
Mhm.
all the hands, which is why it was titled Manos Hands of Fate, because he had all this existing artwork. So on the mantle, you'll see the hands, the cauldron of fire made out of metal. He did that. He worked in many different mediums. He created the master and dog painting, the
Mhm.
oh the head sculpture on the mantle, the Torgo staff. In fact, I'm an artist, and I had the opportunity with a friend's
Oh,
welding torch, and I recreated my dad's work the
awesome.
same way he made the original Torgo staff. This is cut with a welding
Mhm.
torch in cold rolled steel.
Right. And he made the severed flaming hand too, right?
Oh yes, he did. In fact, where is it? I made one too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we made Manos Returns. We did the
Right.
sequel, and we were able to get while my dad was still living, so he participated, and we found Diane Marie, who had played my mother in the original, and we brought her out from Colorado, and she played my mom in Manos Returns, and I'm good friends with the sheriff's son. The sheriff was William Bryan Jennings, and so Bryan Jennings, he came out and played our sheriff. So we had everybody that we could find that was part of the original. But anyway, I had to make a severed hand, which I wore on my costume, and
Oh, that's so good.
isn't that cool? And look,
It's a
it's got a
keychain.
yeah, it hung from my belt. I wore it with my costume.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then my mother made the costumes. I mean, I still remember my parents laying the fabric out on the living room floor and designing the master's robe. And as an artist, I recreate the master's robe because my mother taught me how to sew. So, and I remember how it's made. So I made some stupid commitment to I don't know. One day I went, I'm gonna make 100 of them, signed and numbered.
Oh.
But that was a few years ago, and actually on my work table behind the computer here is I'm working on number 55 and number 56 out of 100. So I've made a lot of master's robes,
Wow.
custom, custom. I made one for a guy that was 6'8"
Wow.
in England, and I made one for a woman in Georgia who is 4'11".
Well, that's a lot of work. So, one thing that I came across on your blog that I just loved is the story about how you found the movie again after you thought it was gone. That's like the most amazing story to me. Do you mind like retelling it a little bit?
No, it's the most amazing story to me too. I mean, this whole thing is it is like the master is with us always. So the premiere in on November 15th, 1966 was a total disaster. I mean, everybody was dressed up. There was lights scanning the sky, a limousine to bring us all there. My mom and I spent half the day getting our hair done.
Mm.
I mean, it was a big deal. The men were all wearing tuxedos. And then we get in the theater and the movie starts and it was just appalling. I mean, the whole audience was laughing. It was humiliating, and we all, all the adults just escaped as quickly as possible. And so it disappeared. I understand it showed up, on some cable channels. At one point, it did some drive-in theaters, drive-in movie things, and I think it was like the third movie on a horror movie night, and I think it was there to get people to go home. And I mean, I'm serious though. And so anyway, I grew up, and it was pre-internet, but I started looking for it after I was out of high school and was calling university libraries, and I mean, I was actively looking for it and couldn't get a trace. And then 27 years go by. It's 1993. My dad's living on the coast in Oregon, and I'm living in Northern California, and I'm married with a 3-year-old son. And my dad calls me one day and he says, "You'll never believe what I just saw on television." Because he was a Mystery Science Theater fan. And it was January 30th,
Oh.
1993. So the 30th anniversary just passed, literally, of when it was rediscovered. But so it was on Comedy Central, and I knew there was that 800 number in the corner of the screen. So I immediately called that phone number. And you can imagine now, if you call an 800 number, getting a human on the line,
Yeah.
that's just gonna happen,
Mhm.
right? And I called this number on a Saturday, and this guy answered the phone, and he identified himself as Matthew, and he said he was in the HBO offices in Manhattan. He just happened to be there, and the phone rang, and he picked it up. So it wasn't even like somebody was going to answer it. And I said, "You just played this movie that I've been looking for my whole life. My whole family was part of it. Is there any chance I can get a copy?" And he asked the title, and I told him, and there's this long pause. And he goes, "Oh my God, are you Debbie?" So it's like 27 years, and I thought nobody in the world cared about this thing. And
Mhm.
he said, "I just had a copy of that on my desk a few days ago." Yes. So mailed me, he made a bootleg VHS copy and hand wrote the title on there and mailed it to me.
Oh.
And I watched it by myself, and I was just satisfied. I'm like, that's all I ever wanted, I was happy.
Mhm.
I got what I wanted. I got to see it, and my dad got to see it. And then it just took off. I think it was the fan favorite for Turkey Day Awards
Mhm.
2, maybe 3 different times on Mystery Science Theater. It's been on, Elvira put it on her show, and I actually got to meet her. We were guests at the same convention a few years ago, and I got to meet her in person, and she was just as excited to meet me as I was her. It's astounding.
I love that story. I didn't realize before that he actually was a fan of the show. So, like, the idea of not only seeing the movie on TV, but seeing it on your favorite show.
Yeah, he said he was, he was just it was a rainy day,
Mhm.
on the coast of Oregon, and he was in his easy chair, and he had the TV on, and he was just kind of dozing off and on. And then he heard some familiar music, the Torgo theme, and he opened his eyes and he saw the film and he saw himself. He was just, he couldn't believe
That's such a
it.
surreal thing to like kind of wake up to.
27 years later,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. It's amazing. So, how would you describe Hal Warren as a person, like as a director?
Well, I mean, you know, to me, from my point of view as a kid,
Mhm.
he was kind of gruff,
Mhm.
but I guess anybody trying to, you know, do something like that without really knowing what they're doing,
Hmm.
it'd be very stressful. So, but my impression of him was of this guy that didn't have any kids, and he was just kind of like, I remember saying my few lines, and then I was a shy kid, so I'd say quietly, "Is that okay?" And he'd go, "It's fine." He goes, "We'll fix it in the lab. Let's move on." I mean, he said that a lot. "We'll fix it in the lab." Like, what the hell does that mean? Well, apparently, there's a lot that can't be fixed in the lab.
Yeah.
Um, However, if you know about the restoration of
Hmm.
Manos, that's a whole different story. But watching that is really surreal because a it's the original film restored in the same manner you would restore an old Hollywood film.
Hmm.
So, what Mystery Science Theater had from the beginning was probably a copy of a copy of a copy. So it's like watching it through a screen door.
Hmm.
Whereas the restoration is just so beautiful and so clear that I always say it's like you can see all the mistakes so much clearly. It's weird. It's a weird experience because it's really not that bad of a movie, but you can see the mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, from my point of view, the worst thing was the reason me speaking quietly was not a problem was because the whole movie was shot silent. And, nobody bothered to tell the little kid. But all the women's voices plus my 6-year-old voice were dubbed by one woman. So that's why I sound like this. I'm cold.
That's pretty dead on, actually. um,
I'm getting cold, Mother, and hungry.
One thing that I did read about Hal that I actually kind of really respected was when he realized the movie was terrible, but he was still proud of it.
Well, and in retrospect,
Yeah.
especially, he should be
Yeah.
because, like I said earlier, who actually finishes a film?
Mhm.
And the other thing was, he knew from the beginning he wasn't making a great film. I mean,
Right.
he knew that it was a $19,000 budget altogether, and even
Mhm.
in 1966, that's not much money. And the whole thing was shot like in 8 days, nights and weekends, because everybody had a full time job. Um, the lighting was like the car headlights and the ushers' flashlights from the community theater, you know. And then there's day for night shots. I mean, he did the best he could with what he had,
Mhm.
and also he was a salesman. He was kind of flamboyant.
Mhm.
He had originally been a comedian in New York, so he thought of himself as a comedian, and he was a salesman, and he knew how to well, obviously, he got all these people together to stick it out and get this thing done. So, yeah, he should be proud of it,
Mhm.
and if he had lived long enough to see it, I think to see it come back into the world, I think he would have loved every minute of it.
With most of the really bad movies I've seen, and after the movie is panned, the creators tend to react in one of a few ways. Like many of them are like totally embarrassed by it and like try to pretend it never happened and move on. Some are just complete narcissists. Just probably why their movie was so bad in the first place because they don't accept guidance or criticism while they're making it. And then their reaction tends to be either, no, this movie is a masterpiece and you just don't get it, or, oh, actually, it was supposed to be bad. It was a comedy, Um,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
yeah. So I think the attitude of someone saying, okay, it was kind of a disaster, but I'm still proud of the work we did is, an attitude to be admired, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I think every creative mind should have that outlook.
Yeah, and then the other thing, his ultimate goal was not to make a great
Hmm.
movie or even a particularly good movie. Like I said, he did the best with what he could, but his bigger goal was to bring attention to the beauty of the Southwest.
Hmm.
He wanted to bring the film industry to El Paso in the Southwest. He wanted to be the guy known as doing that. And if you look at it, and it wasn't him, I'm sure, but there was some pretty cool movies that came out of that area. Like Easy Rider. He was right. It is a beautiful place and an interesting place to film. But you know, he didn't get the recognition that he maybe should have deserved. Or maybe he did. I don't know. Like I said, he would have enjoyed this very much.
Hmm.
He would have been like Tommy Wiseau,
Yeah.
gaining as much attention as he could.
Yeah, one line from your blog that really stayed with me. If you can't be the best, make the most of being part of the worst. I just love that.
Yeah. And it's true. A friend just recently reminded me of we were doing a painting job. I had a 30-year career doing high-end faux finish and murals and wall treatments and such. And we were showing up to a big job, and she reminded me that I said, what I've noticed in life is if it's not fun, it's just not worth doing. So that's kind of along the same line. And I'll tell you, I have had so much fun with this. I've met the most amazing people. I've had some great opportunities, and I've seen Manos. Like I said, when I first watched it on that VHS at home, and I was satisfied. After that, then I saw it get popular. It'd go up, and then it'd flatten off. And every time I'd say, that was great. I was always satisfied. Like, I'm just happy with it.
Hmm.
And now again, it's on another incline, and it's a steep one. It's bigger than ever. And I don't see any chance of it stopping. There's all these new things. Like, I'm teaching online painting classes,
Hmm.
Mystery Science Theater painting classes once a month. It just keeps going. I intend to be at a lot of conventions coming up. There's a whole list that people have been sending me, so there's a lot going on. I figure I better do it now because I'm not getting any younger. You know,
I
it's
hear that.
been what? Oh God, I don't know. Somebody told me. I always say I'm an artist. You do the math, but it's been like 56, 57 years since this thing came out in the first place. And I'm one of the last surviving people.
So there's a lot of misinformation about the movie. Like, in particular, there's that documentary Hotel Torgo, which is particularly egregious. Would
Yeah.
you say a lot of misinformation kind of originated from that, or did they just kind of capitalize on rumors already floating around?
Yeah, they just picked up on stuff that was already going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What like the one that I heard like years ago was this rumor that John Reynolds was on painkillers because of like the
Mhm.
apparatus in his costume was like causing him pain, and that turned out to not be true at all.
No, yeah, that rumor was funny because they said that the costume was causing him so much pain that he became addicted to painkillers. That's why he killed himself.
Yeah,
Well, like I said earlier, the whole film was done in 8 days, nights, and weekends.
yeah,
I don't know anybody that gets addicted to painkillers to the point they're just gonna kill themselves in less than you know a week and a half. And but and then my dad also made that costume, and I remember how it was made. It was those were my dad's welding coveralls that John was wearing,
hmm,
and John was like 5'8", and my dad was 6'2", so they were pretty roomy. And then my dad took just wire fencing to fill the inside of the legs and bent them, so that his legs would be in that position. But then he added foam from like seats inside, and then John's legs went in that. So they weren't that comfortable, but they weren't like horribly painful. And believe me, there weren't like that many takes.
Yeah.
So what you see of John on camera, it wasn't like he was in them forever.
Right.
Yeah, but he was known to be on acid,
Mhm.
and he and my dad were personal friends. John lived just down the street, like you could see his house from our front porch, and he and my dad hung out a lot. They both had a lot of depression. I mean, John ended up killing himself,
Mhm.
but my dad, in years after that, for a few years, he attempted suicide a number of times,
Mhm.
at least 3 that I know of. So, that's what bonded them, I think, was,
Mhm.
being able to relate to the depression. And think about this too. This is the mid 60s, when men weren't supposed to have those kind of feelings.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a disaster. I
Yeah.
still remember the day when we heard it on the news. That was terrible.
Mhm.
He was only 27, 26, 27 years old. He was young.
Yeah, one of the other rumors was that like everyone involved in the movie mysteriously died or disappeared. I do think it's funny how
I'm
hotel.
like, I'm still here. Hello.
I do think it's funny that Hotel Torgo starts by saying that, but then they never expand on it. Like, isn't that kind of like an important thing to go into in your documentary about the movie?
Kinda. Yeah. No, at that point, when they did Hotel Torgo, I think that the sheriff, William Bryan Jennings, was still living.
Mhm.
The wives, unfortunately, were misnamed in the credits because Hal Warren couldn't remember their names.
Oh,
So
jeez.
half of them he just made up the names. But and I'm not saying those women were sad about it,
Mhm.
but I am friends with one of them, and
That's
we
good.
talk every couple months. She still lives in El Paso, and I'm actually talked her into taking one of my online painting classes. That would be so much fun. I mean, Mary Jo Peel from Mystery
Right.
Science Theater took one of my painting classes. It
Wow.
was so much fun. She did her painting with on paper with crayons. And it
That's
was
cute.
when we painted Torgo, so it was even better,
Mhm.
We were doing a Torgo painting.
Mhm.
But but yeah, so I'm friends with her name is Isela Garcia, and her name is not in the credits, but she was one of the wives. And then Diane Adelson, who in the movies, Diane Marie, her name at the time, she played my mother, and she lives in Colorado, and we still talk. And I'm hoping to be invited to the Telluride convention because she lives nearby, and we could hang out, and I could stay at her house, and oh man, we'd have so much fun. Do you know she's only 12 years older than me? So think of that.
Really?
Yeah. She became like international model after Manos. She had a really high end, really nice career as a model. Beautiful woman still. And then, of course, my dad was still alive. He died
Mhm.
in 2016, I believe, but we were able to have him for Manos returns, and he was able to really vicariously enjoy the whole Manos thing through me. He never attended any events
Mhm.
live. He never traveled, but he just loved to interact through me.
I don't know if you would know this, but okay, so I read that Hal Warren had another script that he wrote for a movie called Wild Desert Bikers, but no one was interested in making it. And then later he
Mhm.
tried to make it into a book, but couldn't find a publisher. Do you know if the script still exists somewhere?
I do not know. I have connected with a couple of his children over
Hmm.
the years, but there's actually a 7-page article. I was interviewed by Playboy
Mm.
magazine in 2015, and the title of the article is "The Battle Over the Worst Movie Ever Made."
Hmm.
And anyway, that's a whole nother story. But Hal Warren's son, he had 5 children. Oh, you asked me about my impression of him. My impression of him
Hmm.
was that this is a guy who couldn't relate to children,
Hmm.
but I learned later he actually had 4 children at that point, and his wife was pregnant with his fifth. So anyway, his fifth child um, somehow decided that he needed a percentage. He somehow thought that I was like making money off of this somehow, and that he was demanding a percentage of everything I did or made, like including the master's robes. He would, and so anyway, we started off communicating, and I got some good information from him. But after that, mm, not so much.
Hmm.
Um, so I never got to find out really the details of that. But I am friends with one of his other daughters, so maybe I'll ask her. That'd be really cool if there was if maybe if she had access to it, maybe she could publish it or
Yeah,
something.
who knows? So, there was one Manos movie that was planned and then stopped in mid production.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the person in charge of that, he this is the part I'm like really cloudy about. He claimed that he had the rights to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, that's oh no, that's cloudy for
Yeah.
everybody, and obviously he didn't, but um yeah, he started making this movie, and what's interesting is that very few of us knew his actual name.
Mm.
He presented himself as this what was he calling himself? I'm trying to remember, but as
Rupert
this
Talbot. Is it Munch or Monk or
Munch.
okay?
Yeah, Rupert Munch.
Yeah.
Supposed to be some eccentric Australian, which he was not Australian.
Oh wow.
And Rupert Munch was not his name.
Wow.
But he got some money together, and he got me,
Mhm.
and he got my dad. We filmed my dad's parts, and he got a couple other people that he thought would be headliners, like Gene Snitsky, who's in the World Wrestling Federation, or was, and Ryan Jimmo, who was a really amazing MMA fighter.
Hmm.
And but unfortunately, Ryan passed away a few years ago. But
Hmm.
oh, he got Diane, who played my mother. He got all these people together, and he flew us all out to El Paso, and we did a bunch of filming. And then and that's when things started falling apart because he made friends with Hal Warren's son, and then they decided somehow, or I can't remember, it
Mhm.
was this argument over rights and all this stuff, and then I got dragged into it, and we all parted ways, never to speak again. Um, but I remained friends with everybody else except for in fact I looked for this guy, and he just disappeared. I don't know what the heck he's doing in the
Mhm.
world. I think, I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, that whole thing fell apart. It's probably just for the better because I
Yeah,
don't know that it would have been that great.
it sounded pretty sketchy.
Yeah, I'm not sure it'd be something I'd be real proud of. But oh, based on that film, here's another thing. Us and the cast and crew, and it may have been the same thing on the original film, is that the director's so nuts that everybody just kind of bands together tighter. And that's what happened on this shoot. And because of that, I met and worked with some really great people and have remained friends over the years. One of them is Jay Lee, who was the director of photography, and he didn't even know about Manos when he started. So anyway, he's very talented, and he caught on pretty quick what was going down here. Um, but when the whole thing fell apart and everything, a couple of years later, Jay Lee was working in LA. He was a cinematographer for our film. And he's working in LA, and he's working with this guy in a film, was making a Bigfoot film, Primal Rage. And they wanted to do some scenes in Bigfoot country. And I live in Western Oregon, in in a little tiny town in the forest, and it was just perfect location. And Jay Lee had been here, so he knew that, and he suggested this location. So they came up here. They brought their whole cast and crew, and we shot scenes in my backyard. I have this beautiful 16-foot hand painted teepee that a friend of mine painted, and my ex husband is almost full blood Native American. So anyway, it just worked out. We did these scenes in my backyard, in the teepee of a peyote ceremony, a healing ceremony, and I got to be the patient, and my ex-husband was the medicine man, but my whole family was part of it, my kids and my grandkids. And the guy who created this movie, he does costuming, and he created the costuming for Alien versus Predator.
Oh wow.
And he's 6'8", and he not only created the costuming, but he also played the role of Predator in the movie. Yeah, he created the costume, and he plays the character of Bigfoot, but he also wrote and directed it.
You did a podcast for a while. How did that go?
Yeah, it was going really well. And it's just that as an artist, I have so many different things going
Hmm.
all the time. It's hard for me to. I mean, like now I'm teaching classes, I'm starting an artist co op, I'm looking at getting into galleries, and I'm looking at going to conventions. Oh, and I'm making a new show.
Hmm.
You can see the trailer on YouTube, and it's called the Manos Chronicles.
Hmm.
And we filmed that last year. We filmed the pilot episode and hoping for it to be a series. And as far as I understand, I believe we have a distributor. It's just about done.
Oh
So
wow.
that the pilot should be out soon. And that's really good too. I'm proud of the projects I've been in since
For
Manos.
sure. Um, I actually was just about to ask what you're working on now. Is there anything else you want to plug before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, my online painting classes,
Mhm.
because I'm doing once a month, every second Saturday, second and fourth Saturday. I'm doing 2 classes a month with Dumb Dash Industries. So just look Dumb Dash Industries, and Chris, who produces that show, also produces the Mads show. Frank and Trace do a weekly riffing. Mary Jo Peel has several shows on there. So it's just really well produced. And let's see, we've done last 2 weeks ago. I think our painting was Jan in the Pan. We did the from the brain that wouldn't die. We've painted Mothra, Godzilla, um, Well, the first painting we did was, of course, the master and dog painting because my dad painted the original. But so every month we do a different class, and then it's become so successful that we added a second class
Nice.
that's non Mystery Science Theater paintings. So we say paintings for everybody. But I have a lot of people that attend both classes, and so you can just join one class and check it out and see if you like it, or you can subscribe for the year for a really great price. But the other cool thing is if you can't attend live, then it's recorded.
Nice.
And or if you don't
Cool.
finish your painting during the hour and a half class, then a lot of people they'll touch up and they'll continue. But the main thing that I think is so amazing about this and so unexpected for me since I went online is I've been teaching these paint and sip parties for like 7 years, and transferring it to online is it's a different platform. But I've always been really supportive of people. Like, it's your painting, do it your way. I mean, it doesn't have to look like mine, but online it extends it to a whole nother level because people can use any medium they want. They don't
Right.
have to do it on canvas with acrylic paints. They can do it with anything they like I said, Mary Jo Peel did hers on paper with crayon. But I have several people that are using their iPads. One lady painted her Godzilla on a rock, you know. I'm, and then she did another painting on a bottle, with fairy lights, a little cork and lights that light up the bottle. So it's incredible. It's expanded my art, and we just have so much fun. So
Mhm.
I tell people you can do your painting with macaroni, dried macaroni, and food coloring and glue. I don't care. It's your painting, but and then people put them on the student page there, our student gallery, and it's just great. It's just a great way to get together with people.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Well, thank you so much for doing this and being part of this. And yeah, have a great night.
You too, Tom. Thanks for having me.